Hey YouTube! Last week, Yonak released Magellan and gave me a copy for review. This is yet another subtractive synth for the iPad, and there are already about 20 of those out there, so you've really got to bring something new to the table. And they do indeed, with 3 oscillators on one synth, and an additional 3 oscillators on a second synth, which you can couple to make big sounds. That right there is 6 oscillators completely blowing even N-log out of the water. And if you just want to play around with it in its kind of standard mode here, if you've got a split keyboard for your MIDI, you can be playing bass notes down here and playing a lead. Or using the on-screen, you can play the second keyboard. And what you're listening to right now is just the presets. There are so many. It's like over 250 or something crazy like that. There's all kinds of retro and basses and pads and arps and even percussion, as well as a bunch of presets from Sunshine Audio, who are quickly becoming the leader for professional presets on iOS. Some of these are really good here. There are way too many of these for me to go through them all. Here's another one of my favorites. Now, I'm playing that right now on my keyboard, but if you're trying to play chords on this, it can be kind of tricky, it's kind of clumsy to do it on the on-screen keyboard. And fortunately, they have a chords cheat thing in here, where you can select between your synth 1 or synth 2 and then turn this on. And now any single key that you press will play whatever scale and key you've selected here. So you're hearing chromatic fourths. So now, even if you're playing from a keyboard, a single note will trigger an entire chord. So I can play with my split keyboard like this. And that pad was kind of getting drowned out by my beefy bass there, so I can go over into the preferences and adjust the slider here to change the volume on the first synth part, so, or even pan that. Now let's hear how that sounds. Oh, that's much better. When you combine the synth coupling with the on-screen preferences here, you can do some really interesting stuff to make not only the pad play in a chord, but you can play that chord in an entirely different octave. So if you increase the semitone range here and decrease the semitone range on the bass or the first synth, now a single key is going to trigger the bass to play 1 octave below and the pad to play a chord 1 octave above. You might be hearing all kinds of different effects going on, and there are a lot of effects going on. You need to keep track of where you're at with your effects, though, because you're either pulling it from the first or the second synth source. So if you're loading up a preset, it's going to change all of your effects. As you see, the knobs all changed right here. So if you have something you like, you need to keep track of whether or not that's on the first or second slot, because that is switchable right here, and you can get kind of confused with that. Well, on the other hand, that's really handy for quickly swapping to audition different types of effects. So we can listen to the first synths, the Armstrong's effects, or then swap it. There's also a built-in sequencer, which is going to seem familiar for anybody who's used the IMS-20 app, as you can set your pitch and octave by scrolling around through these knobs here, and you can actually change which knob is controlling what function. So if you're trying to do like some acid thing and you want to change your gate and velocity, you just swap through this, and that's entirely independent. So you see this is maxed out here on octave, but if you switch it over to gate, you can change that, and that's entirely independent of the velocity, which is maxed out. But when we go back to octave, it's remembered where that was. You can also choose to skip steps or set an end other than the 16th step, like there. But if you want it to stop stopping at 2, you can't just keep on clicking that. You see how it's just flipping right back? You need to set a stop point somewhere, so don't just keep on clicking the 2, go over to something else that you want to stop on. And you can actually program entire songs into this using 256 pattern slots and 16 patterns to select from. When you take a deeper look at the synthesis pages, there's a lot going on here that is not standard in a lot of other synths. You've got your unison and your sync, but over here is an elaborate FM synthesis panel. And this isn't just a simple, send one oscillator into the other and hope for the best. This has different contours for the envelope, which is kind of like the envelope mod, and an entire envelope dedicated to the FM. So you can do some really wild stuff. Here's a little FM demo I put together. I turned off the synth coupling, so you're only hearing the first synth part, which is sounding like that. And as I add in the FM, you can start to hear something. But for FM to start to really sound interesting, you want to have some differentiation in the tuning between your oscillators. So if you just give it a little bit of that, it's already sounding crazy, right? And you can fine-tune that with the scent here, which is only going to tune it to a maximum difference of half a note. And you can further fine-tune that by picking the ratio here of how much of oscillator 1 is going into oscillator 2. And once you have a tone that you like, you can start to play with the envelope here, which will affect how much of the FM is occurring as time progresses. Slap on our pad here and play these two together. I'm really impressed by the combination of these advanced synthesis features as well as ease of use features like the sequencer and the chords. The preferences section really exposes a lot of great details like the unison detune, as well as which channel the different synths are listening to for MIDI, and control over not only the mod wheel but also the touchpad, which can make this perform similar to Animoog, where you can play this vertically and control something in a polyphonic aftertouch sort of way. I have a few minor gripes with this though. There's a hold mode, and it's actually holding the G right now because it only holds the last note that you press. But sometimes if you're playing around on this thing, you can lose track of that. And although it lights up when you're holding it down, it doesn't light up to let you know that that is still being held down. So, occasionally you can just completely lose track of it. You don't know which one is active. There's a couple of ways to make it stop doing that. You can panic, which is a great way to shut everything down, or just turn off hold. And a lot of the presets are kind of backwards on how the cutoff and resonance works on the XY pad. Usually cutoff is the X-axis and resonance is the Y. At least that's kind of the standard that a lot of people use. And in this, it's reversed, which is kind of confusing. And those are really my only complaints. This is an amazing synth. Yannick has really nailed this one, and I'm quite impressed with it.